Hey everybody, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. On today's episode of conventioNOT, Ryan and I sit down and chat with Chris Hoogerhyde of SGS Towers, based out of Michigan. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on Chris's title because, to be honest, it's really hard to give him one. It's hard to put this guy in a corner. It's hard to paint him with one color. His background is incredibly diverse and his current skill set is equally impressive. More so though than what he does in 9 to 5, where he currently is at, we talk a lot about the really rough and rocky road he chose to travel to get here. Chris is 19 years clean, and his years in recovery are nothing short of amazing, inspiring, motivating, any of those positive words you want to use to describe a difficult path that has not only recreated a man, but has helped develop and nurture and be there for so many others. One of them being my brother. So Chris is like a brother to me as well. I'm so grateful he spent this time with us today. I assure you, it's not just about the heavy stuff related to addiction and recovery and AA and whatnot. We also talk about Chris's other passions, his hobbies, his interests, including metalsmithing. Yep, Chris is a knife guy. Not only does he have them in his pockets, but he's building them in his garage. It's such a cool story. It's such a deep topic that we just barely slice into the surface of. Pardon that pun, but stick around. Chris Hoogerhyde on conventioNOT.
Hey,
now
Chris.
we're really getting to know each other. So Chris, meet Ryan. Ryan, Mr. Chris Hoogerhyde.
How you doing, Ryan?
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
So this
I am
is
well today.
this is a very interesting. I'm curious, Chris, what is your current location?
I am somewhere near the Missouri border on the Kansas side, like Altoona, Fredonia, somewhere out in the wasteland.
Yeah, like anyone knows where that is, unless they live in Kansas.
I don't even know where that is. I'm at Pete's gas station with
Perfect.
with the local color.
I was gonna say, bro, they're gonna wander over in about if someone doesn't come over and knock on your window in about a half an hour, you get out of there because that gas station is sketchy. People shouldn't be hanging out in their cars for an hour plus. I think that's an appropriate introduction. I wanted to ask where you are today because well, Chris's current employment is with SGS Towers. Am I correct? That's a company my brother is affiliated with. We've had on the show before. I always err on the side of caution of introducing our guests because I would rather throw that responsibility at themselves. And that gives you an opportunity to kind of tell us who you are and how you want to be introduced. So, Chris, first and foremost, thanks for joining us today. You're a part of my family, and we'll get into that a little bit later. You got a lot to share, and I'm excited to introduce you to our audience.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I appreciate the request to be here. This is really fun. This is giving me a chance to hang out and talk with some people that I'm sure have a lot of fun with what they're doing. And you're clearly cerebral kind of people if you do a podcast like this, and it makes me really happy to be asked to do this. So, yeah, I mean, I'm from Southeast Michigan. I was born there, but I kind of grew up all over. I climb towers. I make knives. I'm in recovery. There's a whole lot of different parts of life that I'm kind of involved in. And, I like to be creative. I like to be active. I do a lot of backpacking. We've got a lot to talk about depending on what you guys want to focus on. So
that's what I love. I knew I wasn't going to be able to pigeonhole you or put you in one of those silos at all.
That's my goal, is to know a lot about a lot, and to be to be a little bit of involved in all of that. So yeah, hopefully we can go deep on something.
Well, Ryan, in Chris's introduction, and I wonder, I Ryan uses the phrase elevator pitch, which I know is like an outdated term, but he's introduced that to me in terms of kind of like a sales type thing, and like your introduction to people. What do you first and foremost kind of associate yourself with, you know? And like, sure, we've all got that shit in our heads, whether it's your job title or husband or father or whatever. But like, Chris, seriously, for you, if someone was like, give me 2 sentences, like, what do you throw out there?
Just, basically try to make yourself interesting, like just try to have fun and be interesting, So if I'm trying to describe myself, I would say I'm just trying to find what's next. I'm trying to find what you like, and can we go do it right now?
That's all right. See, that's what has always intrigued me about you.
That's a great introduction.
Right? Like, I always try to find shit that Chris doesn't know about. And like, I don't know what sort of subfeeds this guy's channeled into, but I haven't found anything yet that he's absolutely oblivious on. And by no means, Chris, I don't mean to speak for you, because I don't think Chris would go out and call himself necessarily an expert at anything.
No.
Well, on that note, though, you've been in recovery for how many years?
19 almost.
You probably put your hours into that to justify like saying you've seen, hopefully, most of what can be presented or involved in that pursuit of recovery. But
yeah, and also to go back to what we were just talking about, pre 2002, I knew nothing about a lot, and I knew a lot about heroin, and drinking.
Yeah, so like, a couple things you knew a ton about, right? So you're like, well, I may actually be an expert on a couple things that I don't want. I don't want people to know I know that much about, right?
And you can't really pitch that in the elevator and be like, what do you think about getting really hammered right now and going and finding the dark side of town to like go do nefarious things, like
1 out of 10 times, 1 out of 10 times, 3 days disappear.
Yeah, 9 people might run away, but you get that one person that's like, let's burn it down. There's a couple of weird things that go along with that. Like, people get this idea of like, the people that are addicts are lazy, and it's like, these are some of the most industrious people in the world. These are people. They need to get money right now, and they need to get money.
Most creative, persistent, like.
Day. And like, also, like, if I'm in a new town and I need to get drugs, finding the one guy that's out there in the world, not like in some shady house. Like,
it's a needle in a haystack, but you find him.
I found that needle every single time. So it's weird. It's like, I wish that we could teach children the motivation and optimism that crystal meth does. Like, not to teach them to use crystal meth, but teach them to be that optimistic and be that driven and resourceel. Like,
nothing get between me and that goal, right? Like, I hate to say it, but if being an actor was the heroine, and that kids were introduced to, they would do it. They would all be able to become actors.
With the zeal and the tenacity that an addict does for any of that stuff. Can you imagine the juggernauts that we would be creating? These people they'd be in another level.
I have to say, because it's probably somewhat of I see Ryan, and I know it's not off-putting to him because he knows me and he knows I'm kind of dark in these areas, but like, I think to some people like these topics and like these realities are either ignored or just pretended to not exist, and I think I need to be clear. The reason why Chris and I are sitting here not making jokes, but talking lightly on the topic is that I was introduced to Chris through my brother. My brother has been in recovery. I think he just celebrated 11 years.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a rocky path before that. I wouldn't say he never attempted to recover before that, but there was no real sustained success at that. I can honestly recall hearing him talk about meeting Chris. Chris has been my brother's sponsor for I don't know how many of those 11 years.
Probably 10. I think 10 of them.
So the reason why I'm talking and we are talking about such a nefarious and like sad and heavy topic with this levity is that Chris and my brother are the success stories. And every day they continue to be the success stories. And it's allowed me to kind of get an education and an experience in something that fortunately it's not a road that I have gone down.
I think, Mike, people need to know like that once you get kind of outside, once you break through and you're in recovery, you're not trying to recover. When you're in recovery, you're not broken. You can laugh. You're not, if I was to look at somebody, I would not make fun of somebody that's like trying to get sober and failing. That's not funny. That's urgent and that's dire. But when your brother and I get together and we talk about the things we did, we cry about it because it's hilarious. Because we can't believe that we're in the bonus round. We can't believe that that now, like, if you don't laugh about some of that stuff, you're not really alive, because that stuff it's so absurd. Some of the things that we've done were so out of character, not just for us, but for any rational human being. When I look back on it, like, would I have rather got my shit together sooner? Of course, but also some of the things that I can recall doing were, like, if you could watch, you watch videos online of people like crashing motorcycles and like they think they're going to make this jump and it's some guy in his backyard and then he crashes and you're like, yes!
You laugh as a bystander. Yeah, we all laugh.
And you should, because it's hilarious. And maybe he got hurt, but he's better now. Like, and we're better now. Like, now, laugh.
My brother, he was my best man. And my wedding, down in Turks and Caicos, we got married officially in the city hall in Toronto, but then we had a big get together. So my brother as my best man, and I was his best man, so I'm not going to vouch for my best man speech when I was like 17, 18 years old. I don't really remember it, to be honest. I was so panicked. But I remember my brother's, because my brother gets up there and he says, "Hi, my name's Dan. I'm an alcoholic." No one laughed. The problem was the only people that laughed were like me. Nicole kind of giggled. My mom and dad sure as hell didn't laugh, but my siblings were like, like, it's funny, man. Like, it's
funny now.
Maybe it's not funny, but that doesn't mean we cannot laugh about it, right? Like, there are ways that you need to, like.
So there's people, like, I know people that have done, like, that are in recovery that, like, they've let loose all their darkest secrets. So they don't have to feel in fear of being exposed. Like, things that are, like, they're not just humbling, they're humiliating. And they're I'm sure that there was a period of absolute gut-wrenching shame that came, like, now the whole world knows about that thing I did. But now they're free, and, like, absolutely. When people talk about, like, somebody blowing your anonymity, like, I don't do that. I know your brother doesn't do that. In the right circumstance. I mean, we're in business, so, like, we have to kind of pick and choose. But also, like, when you get to know us on a personal level, like, I want you to know so that you don't necessarily have to think that I'm one of those people that, like, like, you can't drink around, or you can't, like, we can't go to a bar. Like, we've done the right things and we live the right way we can do whatever we want to do within the bounds of, if we're there for a reason, if we're there, with good intent and we have the right kind of solid footing for our, what's going on in our lives, I can do whatever. And so now I don't have to, like, kind of live in this, like, if so-and-so finds out that I'm an alcoholic, like, my whole world's going to crumble, like, I get that out of the way. Not necessarily, I don't tell everybody, but, like, if we do go somewhere and they're like, "You want to drink?" I'd be like, "Nah." And if they're like, "Why not?" Then I might just kind of have to say, like, only if we can go get cocaine after that, And then they're like, ugh.
And then the dude who just met you and is literally just like, what?
And be like, "I hope you know how to fight, because in 3 hours we're going to be fighting."
We can fight. And I'll take 2 tequila.
What's your wife's name?
Yeah, right? Like, I'm sorry, but, like, that shit is funny to me. And I guess it's okay that it's not funny to everyone, but, like.
Well, I also have to wonder, like, if it's not funny, what's going on with you? Like, why is it sensitive? Do you have somebody who's struggling? Maybe we can help them. Like,
I think the biggest issue to me is just stigma of anything. Sure. Stigmas exist for a reason, because they're usually associated with things that, maybe don't lead to real productive things. But a personal thing, like, you gotta wash yourself of that shit. Like, what other people think of it versus, like, how you can maybe affect their thinking of it. Those are very different things, And like you said,
you need ambassadors.
Why are you having such a hard time acknowledging that this is a real thing. I've had conversations with buddies before, and like, this is kind of weird and too much about me than you, but like, where I've said like, hey man, like alcoholism is something that runs in my family. It's a very thin line that I walk because I do continue to drink. Where I'm able to be open about that. Like, man, I know it's behind every corner. And if for not, the knowledge and experience of my brother and, my wife and things like that, sure, I may fall victim to that same situation. And I've had that conversation with others who were so obstinate that like, whoa, no, what are you talking about? Like, no, you're not an alcoholic. Like, you have a job. And I'm like, hey, to me, that's not a really bad word. I'm not stoked on it. It's not at the top of my resume, but it's not something that we have to like hide, put in a closet and pretend doesn't exist. Like,
well, it's also not the death sentence that, it used to be like, in like the old Irish novels where it's just like, you're the town drunk now.
Yeah.
You're going to
cut off his throat. He's good for nothing. It's like, dude, you got to acknowledge it first. I mean,
not everybody makes it. And the fact is that, the statistics for drug and alcohol addiction are still pretty grim. There's no medical treatment for it. There's some things that they can do to inhibit the receptors, like that kind of get set off by narcotics and things like opioids and things. But there's no real, like, take this and you won't want to do it anymore.
Exactly, like a quick fix. There's no surgery for alcoholism or drug addiction, right?
So it ends up being this like socio-spiritual kind of thing where like, you create a support network and you create this like personal development kind of thing. And then ultimately you kind of create something, the way I usually kind of put it is like, you create a life that you're not willing to gamble with anymore. And like, cause most of these people, like when you come into recovery, like your life sucks so bad and it's so small that you don't have much to lose by failure. Like people are like, don't you realize that your life is at stake? And they're like, my life sucks. I don't have much to lose. So you don't know who you're talking to. Like, do I realize I might go back to jail? Like that's just a part of something that happens to us every few months.
This is the ride. Yeah. Like this is the ride I'm used to riding.
Yeah, like I truly believe before I got sober that some people get to be happy and some people get to be used for like voodoo dolls, for like, whatever's out there. Some of us just have to go through suffering and that's true to an extent, but like it really was a warped perception. And I think that the people that kind of observe that stigma, they have the same thing, just kind of from the other side. They're like, some people just can't get their shit together.
Some people are broken. Yeah. Like some people are just fucked up. Whatever. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, and it goes through that with like mental illness and things like that often kind of overlap. But yeah, like some people, they just don't know that there's a pathway or many pathways to a better life.
And it's not black and like we talk on the show all the time about it doesn't matter what the topic is. The sad end of it is that it can be diametrically opposite, right? You're either good or you're bad. You're broken or you're fixed, or you're, and like this is very much one of those topics that's like, fuck the far left or the far right. I don't mean that in a political sense. I just mean if you call it a spectrum, right? Like this is all about the middle. This is all about the in between, and like.
Well, it's also about like feeling your way along the wall because the map is different for everyone. So like I can draw an X on where I got, what I did to get sober. Somebody can do all the same stuff, but it's different for them.
Hey, it's Ryan. Mike and I need your help. We are getting to the end of our Rolodexes of interesting people to bring to you. Sure, we're fortunate enough to have folks reach out now from outside of the podcast land to record with us, but we'd like you as our listener to suggest somebody that you might know that has an interesting story. We'd love to talk to them. How do you do it? You could get at us on Instagram, Facebook, or send us an email at conventioNOT@sunorstorm.com.
You can look at me and you can be like, yeah, that guy probably did some things. But like when somebody comes in off the street, they look at me like I am some kind of like, I got a collared shirt, I got expensive shoes,
You're the end game to a certain group of people, you're
well, to a certain group of people, they don't believe that I ever did it. They're not really all that interested. They're just like, I'm here. But that's all I got.
I've definitely learned to appreciate that. Yeah, like AA is not about everybody telling their war stories about when they were. If anything, some people show up and they think that's what it's about. But then they quickly learn, like, listen, man, we've all done some real dark stuff. Like, if you belong here, it's not a pissing contest.
You know, I try to make it at least a little bit engaging. You know, if you're there to kind of see that people can change, people can like grow out of it, and you're not like, their concept of AA is much like the other people that have never done drugs, where they're like, some people, they just get broken and then they got to be there, and then they're like this very fragile person that's just like, I'm here by the grace of God, and you know, I made it through another day. Like they need to see it's not always going to be like that, you know. And the people that are like that, they're kind of missing some part of it that takes that away, where it's like, I can't remember the last time I just trying to get through the day. There's a world of potential out there. You know, there's a multiverse of possible happy lives that you could have, and it all could start right now. You know, like, I know you feel like shit right now, but if you just let it go and stick around, hang with us, do what we suggest you do, you never have to feel this bad again. You know, and like, some people, they look at that and it kind of flips that switch of desperation that turns to hope. And like, if you can light that ember in somebody while you're at an AA meeting, God damn it, you've done something really, really special. And you know, like, we try to do that. And ultimately, like, it's not just because we're altruistic. It's because, you know, we want people to feel what we feel. And we also want people to be around to help us, because that helps us. Like, saying it out loud. Like, if I tell Dan to do something, like, I better be willing to do it. You know, if I'm like, hey, been to a meeting, I better have gone to a meeting. Or, you know.
Yeah, that's the ultimate accountability, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, as friends, and you grow into be more than that. Like I said, man, like, you're my brother, and there's people in my family that think of you as a son, and, you know, because it's that level of accountability that I think, even if you're not friendly, right? Like, I don't know if there's ever any, like, a sponsor-sponsee relationship where it's just like, no, you just fucking do what I say because I've done it and I know how to help you with this. But to me, it's just, it doesn't matter what the motivation is as much as, like, the result. And just that spark you mentioned, even if it's tragic, but even if that ember only lasts for a day, right? Like, maybe they'll have that memory of that ember, and maybe it'll stick next time. It'll catch next time. Because to me, that would be the most disheartening part, is just the failure rate, right? Like, because the failure rate's absurd, right? I mean, most of the people you talk to, do you talk to them like once or twice and then you don't see them again?
The interesting part is you see the people that keep trying, they keep coming back and they keep failing, but they know that, like, most places would shoo them away, you know, but AA's like, come on in, you know, get warm, get, you know, your skin's paper thin, you know, sleep inside, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we just try to plant seeds and let them know, like, there's a place in the world for you, you know, because I don't know.
Keep being here for you.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people out there that most people don't realize. They're not just misanthropic or just hopeless vagrants. They're people that don't believe that there's a place in the world for them. You know, these are discards. These are, you know, these are outsiders, and not everyone wants to. Make no mistake. There are people that you could be like, you've been homeless for 25 years. We got you a home. There's a government grant.
Yeah,
they built these houses. Yeah, and these people are like, why would I want to be beholden to some house with rules?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I have a tent. I live outside. I'm doing fine. Those people exist. And that's awesome. Because, like, I'm so glad that those people, they know their place in the world. They embrace that. But there's people out there that they don't realize that they're not just on this, like, downward spiral, that they're gonna, you know, have to ride out this eddy of despair until they inevitably expire broke, drunk, and alone. You know, like, these people that, like, they don't realize, like, take the hand, we'll pull you up here. you know, and like, yeah, you'll probably have some shit job for a couple months, but then you'll realize like, oh, I am smart, you know, all those things that like helped you survive addiction. Because like we mentioned earlier, like these people, in order to survive that, you have to be incredibly resourceful and intelligent and motivated. Like once they realize how to kind of apply those into the different kind of
well, yeah, you start realizing like I can do anything. Like I hate to say it, but like if you successfully get off something like opiates or, you know, heroin, like if you succeed in that struggle, yeah, man, you can probably do just about anything else if you apply the same.
Yeah, well, it's like people that are like,
I don't know that, but
it
seems like it.
People will tell me like I had a 70-hour work week, you know, and I thought I would never get to leave. And I'd be like, man, I've been to prison, so I know like I can ride anything out, you know. It's like there's no like, how am I ever going to make it through this? Like there's some kind of like temperance that comes from living through that life. Like it's the bonus round. Anything after this, like, sure, it might be unpleasant, but like you're no stranger to unpleasant. Like the world is going to be unpleasant. It's going to be difficult. And I think that's a good thing. You know, like we all need to be challenged. We all, you know, and some of us kind of get through that. And then once you kind of make it through that period of being like extraordinarily challenged, the everyday life challenges are just like, you know, they're just sort of familiar. You just know. And you're like, you can say, well, it's not as bad as this, you know, and kind of have a real frame of reference for what real suffering really is.
Well, I think a lot of the times the holes we dig for ourselves are so much deeper than any of the barriers people put in front of us, right? Like, it's like, dude, if you just had started walking a week ago, you'd already be there, but you just been sitting back, pissing and moaning and like swelling in it. And I mean, to me, I think that's a choice, like you said, and once you make that choice,
you can dig your hole for yourself and you can stay down there. You could put furniture down there and be down there for a long time. And then, you know, really cry the blues that you're down there, but everybody else is like, you can come out. You can come
eventually, eventually everyone even forgets you're in that fucking hole, right? Like that's the sad part, man, is eventually you stop crying out. You stop doing everything and you just, the hole is your fault. You created it. And eventually you start to yell at everyone because they can't hear you anymore. And why'd you leave me in this hole? And it's like, shit, man. We tried. Yeah. We tried to reach out. We tried to, we stuck our hand in that hole a bunch of fucking times and you weren't taking it. Like,
yeah, and at a certain point, you can't blame people for, you know, when you tell people to leave you alone and then they do, and then you're like, why won't anybody? You'd be like, you kind of create.
Remember, you told me like, over and over again. So, Chris, can I ask you, like, and I've brought this up a couple times since COVID started, but like, how many meetings are you going to a week, or like, how many meetings do you participate currently?
2 or 3 a week.
Okay.
I've got a couple that are like sometime meetings. One meeting every single week is my Sunday. You know, where basically it's like half the people in my little sponsorship family kind of go to. And we do Zoom
in on that one.
Yeah, we do Zoom.
Well, so now that's kind of what I was getting at, is like, to be clear, have you had any, like, are all AA meetings, like, have they been suspended, or they all shift into this virtual? Sorry to take us on such a segue here, but I'm curious about the technical challenges that these meetings have faced since this all went down. Because I immediately am like, dude, you just told people to stay home from work. You just gave them a bunch of money. And there's no more public gatherings. The first thing I thought of is like, holy shit, a bunch of people are going to be ODing and a bunch of people are going to be falling back into their vices. Like,
yeah,
that was my first thought, which is really weird.
They have what's called Alano clubs, and they're basically like a place that gets, you know, that rents to AA meetings. So like you kind of rent a room, and the charge is like $1 a person or something like that is what's suggested. And basically they have several meetings. Ann Arbor's got a lot of great ones, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so they've got a lot of meetings at this Alano Club. So the place had to close down because they couldn't have more than 10 people in a venue. So they closed down for a while. And, you know, at first it was like kind of exciting to some of us that have been around a long time, because like, you know, what do? Like we gather in secret, you know, like, and it would be like you know, like, or like me, your brother, a couple of other cool friends that we want to like.
The show must go on though. Like there was no like.
So we just kind of gather in a room, but then it was like, all right, we had to acknowledge, like, there's no new people here. You know, we all know how each other's lives are going. We all know what each other are going through. And we started to really realize, like, there are no new people here. And they had like the detox center, but those, they're not letting anybody in there unless they're there for help. So it did end up, they finally opened that place back up, but we go there and it's not the same. You know, it's definitely had its effects. That's changed everything. It's these people that had like sort of minimum wage jobs, that these places closed down, all of a sudden they're out on their ass. Like people that were trying and sort of succeeding in getting sober, now life is back in the gutter because they can't make a living.
And that, like, not to be so like dismal, but I seriously, like, that's why you are an expert at this topic. And the reality is like none of us are an expert at dealing with anything in coronavirus. So I'm just curious, like have you had like firsthand experiences where people were like, man, I lost my network. Like my network's gone, and that's not my excuse, but like where you've had to be like, don't give me that shit. Like, how have you responded to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's people that like the phone calls have really picked up, because there's some people that are like, I don't have a smartphone. You know, there's still people out there that don't have, iPhones.
Well, that's why I say the expectation that everyone's got like a laptop, and I'm like, dude, we're talking about a demographic here where they've been doing hard drugs for who knows how long. So a lot of this stuff have been recent developments. So give a 50-year-old, 20-year junkie a laptop and tell him to log into that meeting. He's like, what is this thing?
So what it's turned into is us giving phone lists, just like old school AA. It's like, call this guy. And like, when you're new, you have this like, what do I have to say to this person? Like, I don't know this person. It's cold calling just to say I need help. Like, it's really, really difficult. So one thing that I've always told people is like, tell them you just need to talk to somebody and your sponsor's making you do it. So you're doing it. And you don't have to sound like you don't fake it. Just like let them know, like, hey, this is really weird. My sponsor's making me call people. How you doing? Luckily, there's guys out there.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah. So like, I'll be like, call Dan Sinnott, tell him that your sponsor's telling you to call him, ask him about this. And, luckily he kind of knows. He knows the deal. So he'll take the ball, run with it, make this guy feel a little bit less awkward, and give him a chance to just kind of like have that little time where like he knows he's not being judged for being new, and he knows that like not everybody's looking at him like he's a piece of shit, because like we've all been pieces of shit. So like don't even kind of dwell on that. Just like right now, like you got a new friend. What are you doing tomorrow? Here's some things that you should do. And like you get those suggestions, and then most of the time those people will be like, call me in a couple days, and then you call in a couple days. So you're sort of like, there's been people that I sponsor have been sponsoring for 2 months that they've never met in person
since this started, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which normally would never have been the case. You meet in a meeting, call me, we'll meet here next week, or we'll meet at this meeting on Wednesday. And then, you would go and you'd meet like an hour before, you'd kind of read the AA book, or like kind of go through somebody's like, the steps with them, and kind of let them know, like, here's what I need you to do if you want to have a good result and you want this to work. Yeah. But now it's kind of like all been done over the phone. And some of these guys, like, luckily, AA it's informal, it's not professional, but it has like these like intergroups that have like special like if somebody's like on the other end of the phone line. So there's like AA hotlines, and somebody can be like, hey, I don't know what to do, I need help. There's a phone list that intergroup has. They'll be like, all right, hey, I'm gonna give somebody your phone number, they're gonna be calling you, and then they'll call us and be like, hey, this is Joe the drunk, he needs a phone call.
I need you to be my kind of eyes or my hands on deck. Like you're in that. Is it kind of regional, or would they
every there's several of them in Michigan, and every state really. Like, so you'll have like a town, and every kind of like little, like think of it like counties will have like an area intergroup, and then they'll have kind of the overarching statewide thing, and then the World Service headquarters is in New York. So it's kind of like the place that prints the books. So like that was one of my things. Like when I got sober, it was like, sure, we all put a dollar in the basket. Where's this money going? And it goes to buy coffee.
No, it's fair.
in books and pay the club. And then ultimately, if there's a surplus, it goes to the New York office to kind of like keep printing the books and keep kind of holding these, kind of area group meetings and kind of to keep the sort of administrative side of it going so that we can be available for things like those hotlines and stuff like that. It's really pretty, and it's been going.
If the lights are on, it costs money, right? Like that's just the real. But I don't blame you for being a little cynical about it. I think that's a natural reaction.
I don't know. I don't want somebody to like just be sitting in an office somewhere counting money off my.
Dude, we had a guest on recently where he was chatting about his involvement with the church, and he mentioned tithing, and I was like, time out. What is that word? And Ryan knew what it was, but then this guy went on to explain to us how it's not like a subjective thing. There's like, it was written in the Bible.
It's 10%,
it's 10%, right? Isn't that like?
Yeah.
But that's what the guy clarified to us, and Ryan and I were both like, 10%.
I didn't know that.
That's a big difference. Like that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
Well, our guest was eager to say like how much bigger of a chunk of change it was to him versus, some of the other parishioners.
I still want to know, like, do you write the check to Jesus or do you got to write it to someone that's alive?
Oh, hell no. You write that,
should I just
write that
it
check
to the utility?
To the man who cashes it.
Yeah.
Jesus got no checking account.
It's a pretty crazy thing.
The beautiful kind of like upflow economics that you talked about, that doesn't exist in the church. Jesus doesn't actually have the New York office power.
I struggle with all that because the whole tax-free thing where it's like, I don't know if that's an antiquated thing that I should really, nobody, I don't know, a lot of the people I know are like, that's bullshit and it needs to change. But there's also the people out there that are like, they're trying to do good. And I'm like, these people have like the Superdome-sized mega church.
I don't care. If you're trying to do good, just give us a paper trail. If it's all good, like let it be transparent. Yeah. Like,
you're talking about like the religion. You're talking about religious nonprofit. Yeah, I think it's antiquated.
I mean, if I'm in Altoona, Kansas, and I see this little church, and like, there's probably 25 to 100 people that go there. Like, I'm not saying turn the screws on those people, but Joel Osteen, like something like that.
Like some other mega churches. And
I'm tired of paying your share, Joel. So
pretty easy to put the parenthesis on that, right? I mean, I think that's a little bit outdated type of a tax. When we talk about all these weird tax things, it's ripe for that, right? Like everybody wants to talk about taxes. I think for sure we could maybe agree that like mega churches shouldn't be the
exempt,
most tax avoidant exempt organization.
Sure.
And I don't mean that towards like just Christians. I'm just saying like all of like religious organizations there are enough ways to be tax exempt by being nonprofit and donating your money.
Sure.
That like you could do all of that. I just don't think or
at very least, let's call it what it is. If you're that big, you're a corporation, and all these corporations have been, finding ways for their teams of lawyers to make them kind of like claim they break even so they don't have to pay taxes, where meanwhile guys like us are doing it.
I think
I need to get one of them lawyers working for my company.
Yeah, me too.
You have to sell something without a product. I think we both learned a little bit more that episode than we were prepared to hear, Chris. I don't know.
I was entertained. I was entertained as hell, man.
My dad was not impressed. My dad's a religious person, and like a faithful religious person. It brings love into his life. That's not always the case. And
you got some family feedback on that one. So what? You just want to leave it at that? Your father was not impressed with that episode. I'm curious.
I've been trying to
tell
work
you a story when he's done. So what Pops say, McD? Like, just give me the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, I'll give you the Cliff Notes. So every so often when something comes up that's big, that's on the show, that I know he identifies with, and I should preface that the McDevitt way is kind of a conflict-oriented way, right? Like we're very heated discussers. So I suggested full well, the episode that we're talking about is called Faith Maverick. And
there were just some things that were shared about the church. And my dad also attends one of those sort of churches too, that I think that he either was not impressed with, or it just like goes against his roots a little bit. So yeah, he basically pushed back and said, he was disappointed. We could say that. And
was he disappointed in you, or like, I was going to say,
no. My dad's,
Chris,
I broke up with the church early on, and so it's been a pretty heated discussion over the past 25 years.
As it tends to be.
But one thing that I would always say is that like our family always came before like a dedicated church network. So I know the show is not about that. I don't want to steal too much of that time, but yeah, I mean, I
think it's
I could see like
I was going to say,
yeah.
I guarantee Chris has had real quick, since we're mentioning family approval, disapproval, like you better believe when I made I shared the episode with my brother, with everyone, obviously, but in sharing it with my family, I knew there may be some, maybe not everyone loves to hear or revisit these stories, like Chris, you're telling stories, you're laughing, I'm laughing, but like moms and pops may not enjoy those memories as much. And let's put it this way. I got very little feedback from my parents. Very little. I'm not even sure. I'd be surprised. I know that my mother did, but I'd be surprised if my dad listened from start to finish. I'm afraid that my dad is a little bit more like, yeah, I get what's going on here, and I've heard these stories before. And it's just like, all right, man.
That's fair.
Weird because
we put new sauce on them. They taste different now.
It's so
the story
weird
about being taken from behind at the ice cream place, though, on that episode is pretty priceless.
Wait, which one? When? Oh yeah,
I think it was kind of the pinnacle of maybe some of his real self actualization when he said, "Hey, this is enough." I think he was intoxicated at an ice cream place, and he was just tackled by some cops.
Oh yeah. That was his last. Well, I think technically that was his last felony. Well, there's a couple of them at that point, but yeah, that was his last real run-in. When, he said he didn't even get tackled. A cop rolled up on him, and his response was incredibly aggressive. So I'm sure my dad hearing that, if he made it to that point, he was like, I've heard this goddamn story enough. You know what I mean? It's just like, this isn't really, it's not for you as much as we were maybe hoping that someone else is hearing this story for the first time.
You know what I say though to my pops? I would say the same thing to Dan if he's listening. Dan Sr., if he's listening to this. Hey, you should come on the show and tell your story then, brother.
Oh, I would.
That's
give
what
anything.
I always say.
Oh yeah.
What's up, conventioNOT listener? Thanks for spending the time with Mike and I today. What we're really looking to do is to grow our listener base time and time again. We've been doing the show for quite some time now, and one of the things we've learned is that the people who listen to us are our best assets. They give us a good idea about what to talk about, who we might want to interview, and they tell others about the show. So if you dig it, don't keep it a secret. Get out on your review channel, tell a friend, or drop us an email and give us a suggestion about something you might like to hear about.
So I said, Chris is my brother's sponsor. So Chris has been by my brother's side for 10 of these 11 years, right? I've met a lot of doctors, I've met a lot of other people, but none of them have been as instrumental to Dan, who he is right now, as Chris in terms of his sponsorship and his support. And Chris was there when we weren't. Chris was the guy reaching his hand into the hole that Dan was in, because the rest of us were like, we're done. We're done. Yeah. We're done. Yeah. And the feelings that my parents have for Chris, they love Dan because they have to. But Chris is their adopted son, because I got video of my dad in Chris's backyard. So this is I'm hoping to transition to because the reason why we're talking to this guy today wasn't just to talk about AA and recovery and his darker days. It was to illuminate that those are
coming along. The episode is Climbing Over the Dragon
with Dan.
You got to scroll down. Just to be clear,
It's an
because I know you're
older
pushing
one.
into this next story. It's an older episode. It's definitely worth a listen. Go ahead, proceed.
But no,
Sorry to interrupt.
Chris, today is like, I only know this version of Chris. So I make him talk about some of those old stories. But the only version I know of Chris is this employed, always happy, like incredibly productive human being. So that's why I love sharing. And productive, I'm not saying like Chris is working all the time. I'm saying this dude is always doing something. He's hustling. He's got all these hobbies. He's got all these passions. And then he just shared. I mean, is it not clear to people how consuming it is to be in recovery? I mean, how many hours you're spending on the phone? And like, I see Dan do it, and I'm just always in awe. But I did want to transition to like the current Chris and the other things that you consume yourself with, because you're a big ass kid, dude. Like, you are such a big ass kid.
I'm a 40-year-old teenager.
Like, we're going to have to hone in on one in particular, but I want to mention a couple things that I know that you actively, well, only a couple things, but like, so Chris has a zip line in his backyard. I don't, is it still out? Is it still functional? Because I know you probably built it to like the highest ASTM standard specifications.
I
Like,
had engineers involved in everything. We talked about lateral bracing and, you know, for side impact.
what's the length on your backyard zip line?
I believe it's 385 feet.
Holy
Which-
smokes.
Most people have like a 40-foot one in their backyard.
Yeah.
I've got 5 acres, and like my wife and I, we rode this one, and it was like, and we're like, okay, that was too short though. And like, I was like, I could do this, you know, like I could make this. So I went to a company that does commercial zip lines, and I'm like, all right, let's get all this, kind of got the formulas for like slope and sag and things like that. And then figured out like how high my one tower has to be compared to my other one. And really like got engineers involved and got all this stuff. And then I just, you know, I built it. It just for like, I call it geek ego, because it's like this thing. It's like,
I can do it. I can do
don't
that.
want to do it if it's normal, but if it's something absurd, I'm like, yeah, let's see if we can do
time
this.
into that. I'll put the time into that. Like, it's so, Ryan, I've seen footage of this zip line being used, and then one time I got a video that was sent to me by one of my siblings. I don't know if Monique or Dan sent it, but my dad. So to give you a little background, Chris, when I was a kid, I don't know what motivated it, but one day I came out. My dad's halfway up the telephone pole in our backyard, putting an eyelet in the telephone pole. At like 8 years old, I realized, like, Dad, that's probably not legal. What are you doing? My dad must have seen a video or something on TV. He built a zip line over our pool that the other side was just attached to our jungle gym. So you've seen, and this is in Allen Park, dude. This is just a residential, normal backyard. And like the first couple times across, so my dad doesn't notoriously take the preemptive efforts and calculations that you do. He sees someone do it and he's like, yeah, I could do that shit. He puts it up and he's like, son, go down. Dude, the first few times, boom, right into the side of the pool. Like, boom, right into the side of the pool. The solution is, okay, you got to lift your legs up. You got to lift your legs up in order to get over the pool.
Your technique's all wrong.
Thank God that zip line was only in existence for a day or two, right? Like, because somebody would have gotten seriously hurt on that thing. So I see footage.
We're at my house, you know, Monique's.
I want to hear the story. Yeah. Tell me how that came about.
And your dad and your brother came over. They wanted to look at the knife shop. And I was like, awesome. Because I love Tim. Tim, like, he's one of the more interesting guys that I've met kind of through your family. And your dad is hilarious. And he's so curious. Like, that's one thing that I really love. He's like, he's there to learn too. And that's my kind of dude. So there's so much that I've had to learn that, like, just even going into it all, like, I know that, like, he's into it. And, you know, Tim's like, he's got that mind too. And so then your brother's like, you want to see the zip line? And they're like, yeah. And then he looks at me, he's like, Dad, you want to go? And he's like, Tim, you want to go? And Tim's like, no. But he's like, your dad.
My dad, though, yeah. Without
I don't know what it is, but he's just like, yeah. And you're like, the first tower, it's 25 feet high. And like, I'm climbing up there with your dad, and I have no idea how old your dad is, but like he's one of the oldest people I know. So,
Sure.
like,
yeah, like he's the oldest dude you've ever climbed that tower with. That's for sure.
absolutely, hands down. And also, like, I'm getting him in a harness. You know, it's like a rock climbing harness with like, you know, Petzl lanyards and things like that with good. But like once you're in there and once you're going, like you're there. And like if you, there is a degree of technique that you need where it's like you'll kind of spin and you're just kind of try to come to hit the landing platform with your legs first and kind of like run up it. I realize that's probably not something that your aged father is going to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, somebody's got to be at the other end to kind of catch him. So like that was me.
Okay.
And so we put him on there. I forget who like sent him off, but basically he comes and this is...
My dad's like 75 years old, you know, and he's pretty physically able, but
also like, you have to wonder, like, is this going to shatter? Like, is he going to shatter when it gets...
happen on the other end?
How fragile is he? Yeah, like the second you release him, it's just like, maybe we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, well, we know it's a bad idea. Like that's one thing that your brother and I, we love is like, we're not afraid to explore a bad idea.
Sure.
You know, he's coming and he comes in kind of backwards and I catch him, but you know, he thumps a little bit, but it wasn't anything like, you know, nobody called 911 or anything. Your brother's just filming.
The footage is so amazing. Like it's just like
soaring like an eagle that didn't know how to fly, you know, like a thrown eagle.
So let's go back to the start of that story because I know this is something Ryan's pretty interested in, man. Like, is it a new thing that people are like messing with knives? Like, how long have you been dabbling with knives?
With making knives or just having knives? Because
both.
Having knives since I was I was young.
Yeah.
As soon as I could get my hands on one, like it was one of those things where it's like it's just part of being a kid where you want it. Like you get a knife and you're like, well, I can chop things down. I can make shit sticks sharp, you know.
Sure.
And like, but
so like you collected them though as a kid, like you always were. Okay.
Yeah, but nothing good. Nothing like, you know, there's. It's.
I mean, we all had Swiss Army knives, but you did more than that.
Yeah, I had like, you know, as soon as like folding knives became something that you can like open with one hand, that to me like changed the game for me. Where it's like it had the little flipper, like where's my knife? Like the little flipper thing on the side where you can open it like that, or there's
that
like
made it.
Yeah.
So it's something like you carry a knife all the time. Like, or just like, I don't say, when I say carry a knife, that sounds a little more like, but it's just something you've always like kind of had in your pocket. Yeah. Like you were.
It's something that it's never far away. You know, like I don't carry a knife everywhere or every day, but usually like there's one in my shoulder bag in case I need something, or it's like, it's just become like a tool. Like you can't carry a pair of scissors around, you know, you can't carry like a box cutter or anything like that. Yeah. It's just one of those things. So it's just something that, you know, you kind of rely on. And, you know, I don't look at them like weapons as much as just something handy. But yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Unusual.
It's useful though, and there's utility to it, but there's a point where you stop buying other people's knives and started messing with it yourself. And that to me is the part where I'm curious because maybe it's just me and I've started maybe following some people that do this, but like I get the danger of the hobby. Like it is addicting. Yeah. I don't know how
I'm only a lurker, but I am certainly aware.
Yeah, like I don't get how everyone isn't like once you see a couple beautiful knives, like I'm not into jewelry.
You learn about custom scales,
but knives and stuff, I'm just like I could see why that's a $350 knife. You know, but other things I'm just like no, don't spend money.
The thing is like I think what really made me want to make them is like I've handled more $200 to $500 knives that I didn't like. Then I was like, I wish I could like this. You know, like I have, and I don't have like weird tastes where it's like the reason I don't like it is something weird and kind of intrinsically.
It's just a poorly balanced knife or something for $500 like.
You can have this thing where it's like you can hold it like this, but if you open it, you have to like then readjust your hand. And it's like there's knives out there you don't have to do that. And like there's knives that are like they would be great if they didn't weigh 4 pounds. You know, like
okay.
So there's some knives out there, and then I've held knives that I'm like, this thing is as close to perfect as I've ever seen.
So what would be when I think of knives, I think of cooking, right? So I mean, what are what you're talking about? Is that like, and seriously, I want to know the silos. Is it like kitchen knives, utility knives? I don't know, assault knives. Like I don't know. Are there groupings?
Of course, there's definitely people that have like they've kind of narrowed their path to only specialize in one thing. Like if you look up like Bob Kramer makes probably the finest kitchen knives you can buy, and they're amazing and they're beautiful, but they're ungodly expensive, and they're like, even if you had the money, you can't just go buy one. Like you got to get on a waiting list.
Okay.
Oh yeah. There's so many knife makers out there that like they don't even take orders like from people that want knives. They have a waiting list. They have so much of a waiting list that anymore they might not even have a waiting list. They might just make a knife and then hold a lottery for people to have the chance to buy that money or buy that knife for an ungodly sum of money. And
was that the case 15 years ago, or is that just been something that the advent of like the internet has allowed these people to develop these enormous 100%. Reputations? Okay, so it is just one of those things that like we've just almost created as consumers, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I liken it to like the music industry where it's like, 15 years ago, if you wanted to like hear a band and you didn't know anybody who listened to it, you just had to like send away for it and hope somebody sent you a record or a tape. Right. Or if somebody came to town, you could see that live show, but you couldn't necessarily just like look up on YouTube. So it's like, if you wanted to buy some knife, or if you didn't know about a knife maker 15 years ago, you just didn't know about it. You'd hear about it, but unless somebody gave you like a physical picture of it, like you'd never know. Or you could go like those gun and knife shows that people have, like those are all, there's no good knives there.
Okay.
It's all gas station Chinese kind of cheapy stuff. So like
just
I've
imported
never
shit. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's just low hanging, like just really $10, $20 stuff. So like I took a backpack full of like $500 knives thinking I was going to like trade with with people, and like nobody there even knew.
It's just not that clientele, right? Like it's not the high end. So this is, man. So I brought this up way too late because we can do a whole knife show. I would like to do a whole knife show someday because
I'd love to do a knife show. That'd be cool.
I don't even get where it starts from. You know what I mean? Like I don't get, what are you metal smithing? Like full on? Like what are you receiving?
Yeah, well here's the weird part about knife making is like, I don't know if it's like this with other hobbies because I don't really go as deep into anything as I do into knife making, but knife making has like 15 full on like careers or like trades. You have to be able to do metallurgy, you have to be able to do leather work and woodwork, and there's a lot of science that goes into it. And then there's all this other stuff that like, there's a lot of ways for it to go wrong. If you don't know how to do certain things or even have certain equipment, it just turns into this like great way to like injure yourself.
Time and money and self, right? Yeah. Like, I think of a couple drugs that are more fun to do that with. You can check those boxes way more easily.
Like I wish that I could watch football and enjoy myself and waste my time that way, but instead I've got to be down there like burning myself, cutting myself. Well,
I don't think the guys that I know that are into the knife making too, like I don't know any of you that have the depth in anything. Like it's almost all consuming, right? Like you're getting into it and you keep getting deeper into it.
Yeah, because no, you're not wrong, because the thing that happens is there's still other people out there. Like for me, I make some good looking knives, but then I go online and I look at like Dalibor Bergam or like some of these guys that are, Sam Edelman.
Who's the guy out here that you shared with me? I think he's like on Big Island, but
RPM Neil, I forget his last name, but he goes by RPM Neil on Instagram, and that guy, his stuff just looks amazing, and I look at that and I'm like, I feel like a child. I feel like somebody who just like can't bring it to show and tell because like someone's gonna see it. And now like
I can't even post this, right? Like, yeah.
So like part of me, you know, like is trying to get over being self-conscious about that, because like I know that I'm better than some people and not as good as guys like that. Or like this guy in Czech Republic, Dalibor Bergam, like his stuff looks like it could not have been made by a human being. And like, to me, that is what makes me want to keep going. So it's like, that's what consumes people, is like, I like my stuff.
That drive, man, that drive.
Until I like my stuff more than anyone else's stuff, I'm going to keep going, because that to me is like, it's not jealousy. It's some weird form of admiration, but also like, I want, like, yeah, I climb towers. I'm in engineering. I have certain identities in the professional realm, but I would never call myself a knife maker by trade. But I'm definitely like, I feel like I am a knife maker, and I want to make that as legitimate as I can by having things that I'm not afraid to show anybody. You know what? And I'm not there yet.
I love this side of you so much, dude, because it's like the switch is flipped when we bring this topic up, and I get to see like maybe not adolescent, but a younger version of you who's like, I don't know how high the ceiling is, right? When we talk about sobriety, and I don't mean I know that you're not like, I got that figured out, but that is something that you talk about. You know, you have seen both ends of it. You've seen the bottom, you've seen the top. So you're so like versed in the corners of that like box. Sorry, I was trying a little too hard there, but when we bring up the knife making, you're just like, I kind of like it. I mean, I love it. I'm kind of good at it. I think like you're just exploding with exuberance and like passion for it. And that's exactly why I wanted to have you on to talk about this.
It's such a cool high stakes thing where it's like your kind of self-image based on, you know, the kind of craftsmanship that you can actually get in this. And also like, you're looking at it and you're like, this thing's coming out really good. But on another level, you kind of weigh this like, I have about 15 hours into this and like a lot of energy. I still have 17 more steps where I could make this into a piece of garbage, you know? And like, it just turns into like, even to sharpening, the final sharpening, you're like, I could make this from being beautiful to being something that's not really anything. Like I could scratch this, and then you're not just talking about potentially setting your work back 20 hours. You're talking about like, I don't even know if I can do this, if I can undo what I just did. Or you get
like that.
Yeah.
You talking about it assures me that it's something I want to have friends that do, but I don't have any interest in this hobby, like personally. And I love knives and I love it, but I'm like, no, I can't see myself getting the same, feelings that it inspires in you, you know, like whether you want them or not, you're hooked. You're in.
I think it's that geek ego that I was talking about before, where it's like, it's something inside me that like needs to make something, and not just something like, yeah, I made that. Like when you mow the lawn really good and you're like, yeah, I did that. You know, like I need something that's going to be used and somebody else is going to be able to like hold and be like, this is fucking cool. And like part of what it is, like when I heat treat all my own stuff. So you can take this and it can be in its heat treated hardened state. You can smack it on a table and it'll break. But if you have your recipe right, if you heat it at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, you can dial in how hard versus how tough it actually is.
Yeah, exactly.
So like all that metallurgy, and you don't really get to find that out until you sell it to somebody for, you know, $200-$300. They go out and use it, and if it sustains what they're trying to do, then you're if it doesn't, then you're a fuckbag who like wasted their money, you know, like
and your time, right? Like
absolutely. And to me, like man. that's such a like holding your breath, kind of clench your fists, kind of like, how good am I? You're like, that to me is like, it's really exciting to kind of play with that. So
are you selling in quantity, or it's been mainly like kind of individual sales up to this point?
It's been individual sales up to this point, but I'm, you know, like I'm trying to get into doing production, you know, and like I have partners in that, and like, I know they want to do production, and it's coming down to this, like,
yeah,
I need to like create someone else that can kind of help with that.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're getting at. Like the control is lost with production, right? Like the art, the craftsman in you disappears when you start producing in quantity.
Right. And there's people out there that have like, they have like, they call them mid-tech, and it's basically like you get a machine shop to make each component and then you can kind of put it together. And like, those are cool, but also
that's different than what you just described, though, and what you love about it. And that's always the danger, right? Like, Ryan, we talk about this with all our guests. Like, the second your passion starts to be like something you want to make money off of, or maybe you don't even want to, but someone else thinks you're so good at this, we can capitalize on this. And it's almost impossible to not change it. You know what I mean? And that there's just something innately commercial about doing it for yourself and doing it for others, right? Like that's just.
But also, I love money, so like, there's got to be an.
So it's a problem worth solving. It's a problem
like,
you're wanting.
One of the cool ways that actually did intersect was like one of the good things about when the virus hit is everybody got real self-conscious about touching stuff, and I made those little brass like door openers.
I saw the little hooks basically.
Yeah. I made a handmade run of like 40 of those and sold them to a local store, and they sold out.
Sold them to a store.
Yeah, and they sold out immediately. Like they sold out like in a couple weeks, and I was like, oh wow. So I made another batch, sold another batch, and I was like, I didn't put heart and soul into them. They did turn out to be like way more effort than I thought they would, but it wasn't the same as a knife where it's like. Yeah, right. I didn't really have to labor over something that was like part of me. It was like, let's crank.
Yeah. It was a little bit easier to just, crank them out. Well, I don't know if you heard, Ryan had just asked, and maybe that was your answer to his question, but he had just asked, like, how do you sell a knife to an individual, like the middleman, whatever, if that exists? But I think you answered it. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's people out there that like, Instagram's big for it. Facebook, there's all these like little groups. Reddit, you post something up and people are like, they ask questions about it, and before you know it, like you get a reputation. Sure. And it's kind of good and bad because there's people out there that are like, if you're gonna go posting your shit, it better be good. It better look good. And like, so there is no like mediocre knife groups where it's like, here's my mediocre knife, what do you think? And a bunch of mediocre.
I can't imagine it's a real passive community.
Really.
Chris, this one broke on contact, but we think you're going to do better next time. Like, oh man, you're done. You're done.
Yeah, you're done. And also, like, there's the people that are like, there's definitely like the knife jewelry crowd where they're like, I don't mess with it unless it's $1,000. And I've never cut anything with it, but it looks great in my pocket, and I carry it twice a year. There's tons of those people, and like, if you're gonna come out with something for them, like. That's another level. And then there's the people
like for them too, though, right? Like, that's there's a lot of expectations on the person when you buy a knife. You expect it to friggin' do what it's normally does,
Absolutely. Like, it's got one job, and then like, if it doesn't do that, then you just pedal.
Yeah, you got screwed. Yeah. So I know, at least the current. Is it Oxblood? Is that the company? Yeah. I mean, do a little. I know it's probably making you squirm, Chris, but do a little promo for the knives. How do people find you? How do people find your knives? I mean, I think you'd rather they find your knives than you, but.
Well, either way, like they can find me and we one knife for an hour and a half. It's Oxblood Knives. You can find it on Instagram and Facebook. Oxblood_knives on Instagram. That's probably the best place to look at it. I usually post a lot of in process kind of stuff because there's so many steps to making that stuff that I'm excited to show everyone, like how to take some just piece of metal and then go through and make it even just up to the point where it looks like the profile of a knife. And then it's still, it's still nothing. But then you can take something that was nothing, make it into something so different.
I'm honestly grateful that I'm not anywhere near you regionally because I go down those rabbit holes, man, and like 2 hours go by and I just been looking at galleries of knives and like different feeds. And dude, if I was by you, I'd be coming out wanting to learn how to do this. And I don't need another hobby. Like, that's what I'm getting at. Is like, I can tell the dark, like how deep this hole goes.
Yeah.
Ryan's probably going to be hitting you up soon. Like, look, my man. Yeah, like
I'm a fan, man.
He's going to be wanting to find out more for sure.
Yeah, I'll be checking it out. I'm a little bummed that we just got like this has been an awesome episode. I really I didn't talk, and I'm sure our guests or our listeners probably didn't are happy that I didn't speak so much as I usually do. But I was so enthralled at the discussion, and then we pivot into this other thing that I'm really into. Not to your level. I'm like the guy who lurks on the internet and Reddit. Shout out Nice Swap. To like. And probably 2, 3, 4 times a year I get in there. So I'm going to be out following Oxblood Knives. Is it Ox_blood or
No.
Oxblood_knives?
Oxblood, one word, _knives.
Nice.
And
Nice.
yeah. And yeah, man, we should do another one and talk about knives sometime, because I can go on and on about it. And
yeah,
I would love that.
I took a little note. We have this kind of running note thing regarding our expert episodes that come up now and now again. And you've heard a couple of them for those who have been around for a while. But we will 100% have a knives episode, because we have some chefs in the crew. We've got some fishermen in the crew. I think that'd be a great discussion.
That'd be cool for sure to just talk about that. But yeah, we wanted to, honestly, today I wanted to tell a little bit more of the Chris Hoogerhyde story. So Chris, I can't friggin' thank you enough, man. I know this is not midday for you, but probably interrupting stuff a little bit. So for you to take the time, man, for you to share your story, for you to be so candid about everything, like, I don't know, it just it really fills my heart, dude. It fills my heart to have people like you in my life and on my Rolodex. So thank you for everything, man.
You guys are my kind of dudes, and I'm real happy to get involved in any kind of conversation I can with you guys.
Well, you be safe out there on the road, all right? Grab some wrap snacks while you're out there.
Wrap snacks.
Yeah, shout out to the Fetty Wap jalapeno honey.
I'm about the Migos. You like the Migos?
Keep it real, Chris.
Good meeting you, Chris. Brother. Cheers. Take care.
Thank you. All right. I think I got it. We'll see.
Awesome.
Stop recording.
That was cool.
That was real cool.
It still says recording on my side, but...
It says recording on mine too, but I just stopped it. Do you want to stop cloud record?